MC Fireside Chats, a weekly show featuring conversations with thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and outdoor hospitality experts who share their insights to help your business succeed. Hosted by Brian Searl, the founder and CEO of Insider Perks, and powered by insights from Modern Campground, the most innovative news source in the industry.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of MC Fireside Chats. My name is Brian Searl with Insider Perks / Modern Campground. You know what I was realizing while the show was playing? The intro was playing. Scott and Sandy and Mike, who maybe Mike's here and maybe he's
I'm
not.
here-ish.
I was about to be sarcastic and say Mike looks better today, but
Thank you.
what I was realizing while the show was playing is that now I lost my train of thought. Now I'm trying to think of what I was thinking. Now it'll come to me later. It was actually quite witty for me because I'm not normally witty. Anyway, super excited to be here for another outdoor hospitality industry focused episode. I think this is the last one that we're all going to be together in this kind of format, right? We're doing this is kind of our open discussion. I don't know that we've actually outlaid this publicly, but we're going to revamp some of the shows in 2025 and just do still weekly, still Wednesdays, still same format, right? I'm going to have a co-host who shall be named later. So that's going to be fun. We're going to do a little Joe Rogan type stuff where we're going to just kind of start the show and then have our guests. And then if you guys want to stay and talk, we're going to stay and talk. And if we have something interesting to talk about, we're just going to talk about it, however long we want to talk about it for. And so that'll be fun for all the people except the ones who are waiting on email responses from me. But, I think we could just do a lot of different stuff here. So I think I can't remember what the weeks are. Shara's going to kick me for not remembering it. But the first one is data, trends, and insights. So we're always going to talk about something to do with data and trends in our reports or what Scott's seeing of the industry. And we'll have, I think Phil Ingrassi is going to be on here from RVDA and Eleanor Ham from RVDA of Canada. And so we're going to have the stats people, right, plugged into that kind of conversation. And I don't remember what the other ones are, but they're probably just as good at some point. I mean, they're not as good without Scott Bahr, but one can hope. So, yeah. I think we want to spend today, though, and I talked about this with Scott. Maybe I probably should have looped you and Mike into the discussion, and maybe Casey Cochran will join us. He said he was on his way back to the office. Last show of the year for this group, right? I think we have an opportunity here to talk about what 2025 is going to bring from a data perspective. What would you put a percentage on it, Scott? 92% sure is going to happen?
I would say so, yeah.
We're just making up
random. I'm going to go with it.
But high, right? We have a lot of data over this stuff. And so we're going to strip away the fluff and we're going to give you some strong educated opinions from my side, some strong factual data from Scott's side. We'll find out where Mike weighs in on this whole subject. He's usually the voice of reason. And then Sandy will be our everything is wonderful. What are you talking about, person? So anyway, let's Scott, I told you I was going to have you start here. So just kind of give us set the ground stage for us about why we need to have this conversation.
The primary reason is that over the past couple of years now, year and a half at least, we've seen some I'll call it attrition within the industry, whether it's the RV industry or camping, outdoor hospitality. I won't include all of outdoor hospitality because not all of it is down, but the kind of the base, when you look at the market overall, it's down. RVing is down. RV retail sales are down. We've seen excuse me, a 2-year trend. And what we've been doing is, we on occasion we'll hear some naysaying that it really isn't, but really, and there's pockets here and there. But the bottom line is, overall, across the country, and unless you're living in one of the hot spots, which would be like Yellowstone, hot spots and more. Yeah. You're probably down a little bit, maybe a lot. And there's a lot of factors contributing to that. And what we've been doing recently over the last few months is kind of immersing ourselves in all this information that we have. We've been gathering it, we've been compiling it, we've been, trying to paint a bigger picture about what we see has happened, but more importantly, what everyone wants to know, what's gonna happen and what's the look ahead. And our kind of teeing it up at right now, again, depends on the sector you're in, but overall the industry, my global kind of, overriding summary is that we're probably going to look at another year of being down. That things are trending in a direction that's not favorable. And our look ahead to 2025 is like maybe we ought to buckle up a little bit. Maybe we have to, but overall, people need to really reconsider where they're at, what they're doing, what their practices are, because doing the same things. And I think that if again, we're going to probably get into the negative a little bit today, but the positive part of it is that there's opportunity. But as whatever role you have within this industry, you're going to need to look at things differently from a different perspective. Because again, the same practices, the same approaches in 2025 is probably not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, but the positivity comes from like being willing to step outside your box and learn how to do things differently, whether you're an RV or campground owner or an association or whatever you are, right?
correct.
But it's not asking you that question where, like, again, I don't think that any of us in this call is worried about the overall health of the entire industry as an aggregate, that people are going to that's an interesting echo. Mike just left, so hopefully we'll get him back. Overall, the health of the industry as a whole, right? But like the amount of price increases, the amount of changes, the amount of new builds and developments and people coming in and acquiring parks at what arguably were probably higher rates than they should have. All that stuff is like, there's not going to be enough people to fill all those parks is the answer. The industry, generally speaking, is going to be fine. But so let's get some of these rebuttal questions out of the way first, because we're going to dive into this for the people who are watching, right? And maybe we'll go longer, maybe we won't. Like whoever needs to jump off can. But I think this is an important conversation to have. But let's get the rebuttals out of the way first, because the common one I hear is, well, so what? We're still up over 2019. Well, cool. But like, were you doing any marketing in 2019? Like, were you thinking about like what's actually happening in the economy in 2019? Like, it was a different animal, right? I mean, that, and then the shipments being up and all the other things. So talk about that, Scott.
Well, for one rebuttal I'll have for you right now is that again, depends on where you're at. We're not all above 2019. So
yes, that's true. That's true.
So
you're not supposed to rebut me. We're rebutting the other people. I'm just playing the devil's advocate.
No, I just wanted to get that out of the way.
It's
But
fine.
It really and truly does depend on where you're at. But yeah, let's just assume that we are above 2019. Okay, that it's in some respects it's irrelevant, because prior to 2019, everybody across the board was on about a 4 to 5% growth. And
I don't mean to interrupt you, but here's the thing too. Like, what does that even mean? Because the US dollar is worth less today than it was in 2019. So are you up in revenue? And is that actually up in profit? Or so there's all kinds of interesting discussions around this that I think rebut that. Go ahead.
No, I'm talking from the perspective of the guests.
Camper nights.
Right. The number of people, the people who are out there participating. That's what I'm talking about
right.
in general. And maybe, anyway. So, revenue is a whole different conversation that you can lead. But anyway, so what you had is this, obviously, the gigantic disruption of, of COVID. And in our most recent report, if people saw what I did in there, was I applied a model to it that showed, for example, RV sales. Had RV sales continued on the path they were on prior to COVID, they'd actually be ahead of where they're at now. They'd actually be further ahead. Their sales would be better. The industry would be healthier right now. So COVID was while a lot of people were cheering that, it was this big disruption, and we had so much going on. It was such a disruption that we're in this extended hangover from it right now. And it changed people's attitudes. It changed their behaviors. So what needs to happen is people have to figure out how to reverse it. The whole idea that when we look at whatever category you want within the RV industry, except for one or two, is, you know, interest in motorhomes is down, interest in towables is down, interest in everything but camper vans is down. Camper vans have actually increased in interest. Again, that's an indicator that something's changing, but camper vans alone are not going to prop up the entire RV industry.
Because camper vans are still low, right? This is a thing we should talk about briefly about percentages, right? The percentage of people already looking at camper vans versus the percentage of people already looking at motorhomes is, so down motorhomes 20%, up camper vans 20% is not the same thing.
Correct.
They don't equal each other out, right?
Correct. So yeah, again, camper vans aren't going to prop up the industry. It's not going to happen. So, but interest is down in all those areas. Interest in more of the quote traditional types of camping is down. Tent camping, interest in that is down. Interest in RVing overall. What's up? Again, it's a small percentage of the market again, but like things like overlanding, it's up. Car camping is way up. And actually in volume is starting to increase. So again, these are suggestions that things are changing out there. So yeah, overall, but the big drivers of the industry are the ones that are decreasing. And that's the problem that we're seeing right now, because it's kind of overwhelming these somewhat more micro trends.
And Mike, I don't know if you were trying to talk, but you're muted. I can't hear you. So if you were trying to talk, I just looked over and saw your mouth was moving. So now I can. Is that you? Yeah.
How about now?
Yep. Now I can hear you. Okay. Were you trying to say something that we should stop? And
No. He said, you know, these other, but glamping is also up.
Correct. Absolutely. You know what? That almost goes without saying. Yeah, absolutely. Glamping is up. I was remiss in not mentioning that. So yeah, and it continues to be up. And I've done some work in individual markets other than the work we even published for some individual clients, looking at glamping in certain areas where it never used to show up at all. It's now showing up. So
I'd be willing to bet, though, Scott, and we need to study this, or you can just refute what I'm saying, right? I would be willing to bet that the glamping that's up is the same trend that we just studied in RV resorts. The luxury RV resorts are fine. The best of are fine. I'd be willing to bet the biggest, strongest increase that's happened in glamping, not generally speaking for the last 2 years, but recently, is the luxury glamping sites are still continuing to go up. And the people who sell the really good experiences are continuing to go up in glamping, which is driving the industry. But it's not the middle people anymore. It's not the put up a bell tent in my backyard.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know that that's accurate.
Well, and I don't know either. That's why I'm saying let's study it, right?
Yeah, I think that's
that is true with RV resorts. We studied it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're, go ahead.
Go ahead, Mike.
He's got a weird lag or something on his phone,
it's
I think.
kind of looking like max headroom.
I'm so sorry. My computer, blew. I can try signing back into my computer. My camera wasn't working. If it's easier for me to be off camera and use the computer, I will.
No, it's okay. We're just trying to get used to your delay. So we thought you were trying to talk, and then it was just weird. So anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not sure why my camera's all funky here too. Anyway, so if you go back to the summer of 2023 and you listen to our streams back then, I was the captain of doom and gloom, at this point, almost 18 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
Right, because we already saw our trends down in the summer for bookings of Q1 of 2024, right? And so we already kind of knew this was coming, at that point was not called the recession, right? We just saw interest rates continue to rise. But we saw our Q1 bookings down. All of our properties are obviously in the southern areas, snowbirdy areas. So we had indications. And then we saw 2024 happen, and there's still a little bit of denial. And then we hit the summertime, and everybody's like, "Whoa!" Right? And then the Labor Day numbers came out, and then CampSpot started releasing their data dig, and you looked at the next 12 months, and the next 12 months occupancy was at, So now I think, certainly the rest of the industry is seeing it. We've certainly seen a shift in developer sentiment, if you will. How excited people were 18 months ago versus now. And it's not just interest rate environment, but it's also what's happening in the industry in terms of numbers and performance. And we continue to see and talk to some of the larger developers who bought 6, 7, 8 parks, some of them ground up, some of them acquisition that, like you mentioned, overpaid, that are now like, whoa, this is not performing like it did during COVID, so to speak.
Shocking.
Right. And so, what I've cautioned everybody is, as they head into 2025 is realism, right? And so, are we going to see 20% declines in 2025? I don't think so. God, I hope not. But certainly, I don't think that's what's happening. I think, and I had this discussion with our partners
Not
yesterday.
at the parks who market correctly. No, you're not going to see 20%, but it's very feasible if you're not doing any marketing or pivoting at all that you could see 20%.
Certainly. And that's, I think, as we get into the micro discussion, but from a macro discussion, we had this, exact conversation with our partners yesterday, which is from a macro perspective, the recession's calming down, right? Gas prices have calmed down. Oh my gosh, what's going to happen with the election? Yeah.
Has calmed down. Okay.
Yeah. And so some of those bigger factors are going to be removed from the quote unquote excuse equation or what's going on. And now it's really going to talk about what's happening in the industry. And what I've continued to say over the last year and a half is what needs to happen now is there's a lot of overbuilding, right? And now the new supply needs to be absorbed, so to speak. So that's the other factor here that really hasn't been studied. And Scott, if you remember, maybe 6, 8 months ago, I was asking you, I asked, Ojai, I asked, Sage, I asked a lot of the pundits, do we have any, demand factors for supply? What are those numbers look like? Because I think what's happened is you clearly see a lot of these new parks, and the Fredericksburg, Texas, I think will be an interesting market study 3 years from now, right? What has happened with that market and supply, et cetera. But we've seen this in the hotel industry.
It's all RV parks,
right? But we've seen this in the hotel industry several times. It's in a cycle, right? And so we're at that cycle now in the RV industry world, which is we've had some economic factors that have hit us. We have the supply factors which have hit us, and obviously we need to absorb it. Now, does that mean the industry is going to go belly up? Absolutely not, right? It is still an exciting industry. It's still a healthy industry, but there are factors that we need to consider for the next year. And now, if you go back to your part about marketing, Brian, I think if you go to the micro standpoint, and this is why I mentioned glamping, we tell every single one of our clients this, that if you have not had glamping in your park, add it tomorrow, because as you continue to see through your research, it's the number one search term. It's up however many hundreds % you want to talk about, each year, and it will only continue to grow, right? As the Hyatt and Hilton partnerships only continue to expand, it becomes more commonplace. That's where I think, the next wave continues for the RV parks. Certainly there's an access to capital and a barrier to entry standpoint of what you're going to put in your property. And then to your point, Brian, the evolution of marketing, enhanced operations, these are all the things that happen in the hotel industry, again, in all these cycles, is who is managing their bottom line the best? Who is marketing the most effective? Who is doing sales calls? What's a sales call? Who is doing revenue management? Right. It's all those things that, being an evolved operator, if you build it, they will come, no longer exists. If you were, a property that had always, that still has the AOL email address and had always, hit 70, 80, 90% occupancy, well, it just can't happen anymore. So now action has to happen. And I think that's a different trend for the industry.
And I want to talk about that, right? But before we do that, and I think Scott will have some data to shed on this too, as we get into more of the micro, right? Is that I think there's something that you're missing. And I think this is my opinion, right? But I think we are just at the beginning of the economy getting worse. I don't think we're recovering. I think it's going to recover for people who are buying parks. And I think it's going to recover for people who have a lot of disposable income and cash and who are going to the luxury resorts. But I think it's just getting started for the economy, because I think we're looking at, I don't think anybody's been laid off yet. Some people have, right? But I think mass layoffs are coming in 2025. And I think that's the only thing that's going to keep that. Everyone here is assuming that the industry is going to be the same because the participant number is going to be the same, because the same people will
I don't think everybody's assuming that. I think most people aren't assuming. I think a lot of people are assuming it's going to be down.
I think a lot of people aren't even looking at the data, Mike, which is part of the reason I wanted to have the show, right? A lot of people don't even know that the CampSpot data exists or the analytics exists. They can't even look at the page views of their website, right? So I think a lot of them have the opportunity to know because there's data being put out there, but I don't think they're looking.
I should have worn my Grinch shirt for Brian today. Man, who brought the Cynic today?
Well, it's my turn to say everything's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I do agree with what you're saying, Brian. I don't think people are looking at the data. And this is something that Scott and I have talked about on different occasions, and Mike and I have talked about, is that there's a huge gap right now on education for a lot of the smaller mom and pop parks, which is, I think, one of the reasons why they are lagging behind resorts. But for at least 2 years, you guys have been hearing me say, and other people too, it's people are looking for experiences, not just a camping trip.
But there's a whole lot less people who are looking for experiences, period, now too.
I don't think that's necessarily true. I think that the disposable income people have had has been reduced during this.
Okay, that's fair. So they're still looking for experiences, but they don't have the money to spend.
They're still looking for the experiences, but the experiences have not been affordable. And we came through a season with COVID where night rates went up and all that kind of stuff. And so now what we've got to figure out is, what does that readjustment look like? And so I think a lot of that is not necessarily about reducing our site nights, because I do think that a lot of our parks, especially the smaller mom and pops, need that additional income to continue to upgrade their parks and become more modernized. But I do think there's other things we need to be looking at, like our cancellation policies, our deposit policies. All those can impact the ability for somebody that will book because they have less stress about the booking experience. I think now is the time we have to embrace technology. And while we've been adopting it a little bit as a camping industry, there's probably still 50% of our parks that can't even take an online booking. And so
I agree with you.
But what
I don't mean to cut you off, like, just for a second, but I agree with you, right? Like, but I think those things are further down the funnel than we have perhaps maybe time to discuss right now in the show, because I think, like, you're right. I think all those things are important that you're talking about, cancellation policies, all that stuff. All that is going to impact when you get the consumer who still has the money to spend on the experience to your website with good marketing through your funnel all the way to the camp spot or the new book to the reservation.
Yeah.
Then that is going to absolutely make a difference. But I think that's a conversation, like, I would love to have with you in like 30 minutes once we get to that. Like, what else can we do that impacts it more? Do you have ideas there?
All right, say that again. Impacts what? The overall?
Like, if you do you know where I'm going, Scott, or am I just totally off target? Like the amount of impact we can have with a cancellation policy change versus the amount of impact we can have with adopting technology or marketing, right? That's what I mean.
Yeah.
I'm not discounting what you're saying.
That's exactly where I was about to go. I'm sorry. It's like people are looking for experiences, and it's not just the experience. They're looking for the package experience, especially a lot of younger people. You know how we always see hotel trends kind of trickling down and coming into the outdoor hospitality industry? I think a lot of people are now, especially younger people, are looking for that cruise ship experience. Give me a package deal so they don't know how to budget. But if you give them, hey, this trip is going to cost you $2,500 and you can pay for it $200 a month at the time, they're more likely to do that. And so for a lot of my parks, regardless of whether they're a resort or they're the small mom and pop, there's things that they can do to create ancillary revenue streams. And sure. I know because I've done this with them, helping them understand how to do F&B, how to do additional sales on different things. And then when you are able to package that together for them, 65% of them will rebook with you for the next year as a return guest if there's just the occasional camper type. So I think resorts are naturally positioned to win already because they are offering these things already, which is why it looks like they do better. But I think that the smaller mom and pops or less amenitized parks still have that same opportunity, which is why I think it's so important we're having this conversation right now. I want them to get educated and get ahead of 2025, not be trying to catch up in 2025.
Well, I don't know that time. I don't even know that they have enough time.
Oh, I think there's enough. The things
like, unless you're bringing in like a Mike to run your operations or management, or like a Scott to do a data analysis, like you need help. You need help fast. You can't do it by yourself. There's not enough time.
I do agree with that. That is absolutely correct. But once you get someone to help or you find the right tools, I don't think it takes you 6 months or a year to implement them. And I do agree that right now, implementing the right kind of tech to maximize your efficiency and embracing the right kind of marketing is absolutely critical for 2025.
Scott.
Yeah, how that dovetails with kind of the overall conversation is that what we're in the midst of overall nationally is a trend where the outdoor recreation participant is much less engaged in outdoor recreation. They're much more casual. There's the trend is that people participate less. In outdoor rec outside of outdoor hospitality, participation is up, yet actual participation events are down. So, and we saw the same thing last year in camping, where even though participation was down, still down like 4%, but the actual number of camping nights declined. So what we're losing a lot more of at a much faster pace are the people who participate repeatedly. They're shortening their trips, they're taking fewer trips, or they're taking blended trips, and part of that does not include camping. So what the challenge for the industry, to dovetail with the whole marketing piece, is how do you get more of those people to do that? They're participating. Hiking trails are packed. The rivers are packed. I talked to a campground owner just this past week. They said for this past year, their camper nights were substantially down, but the revenue was even because their river trips were way up. They couldn't move fast enough to get people on the river this year. So for them, they were kind of happy, but a little kind of like concerned because people went camping, and we had beautiful weather, unlike the year before where they flooded out. So there's the challenge. But for them, their marketing going forward is going to be come up here and go for a river trip. Maybe stay with us too. But that to me is the challenge. We have, and I think this again, I'm going to go back to the impact of COVID, where people are less engaged. We brought in a lot of people who just really aren't that into the outdoors as much. They like participating, but they're just not into it. They're not that avid person, that person that they go camping every weekend. Those are the people that we don't have as many of. And it's the younger generations who are kind of out there and participating at lower levels.
Yeah, that was one of the key things too that I think for success next year is I think we've got to recreate the entry point into camping. I think KOA has always been pretty smart because they've always had tent camping, which was an entry point for younger people with less income to be able to get into camping. And then you just kind of grew into it. You tent camped, and then it rained and you were in the tent, you saw somebody with a camper, and now you've got a little bit more money. So you move up to the pool behind, and there's a cycle of getting them into it. I think we've lost that in that, first of all, people are less comfortable from a security standpoint of tent camping. And then number two, we were not as engaging. A lot of parks stopped allowing tent campers because they felt they could get more money for an RV site. And so we kind of closed off that opportunity to enter. And I think we have to learn to embrace new things. I can't tell you how many people I talked to after hearing Scott speak at one of the events about car camping. And I'd say to a park, how do you feel about car campers? And they'd say, oh, we're not letting anybody camp here in their car. And I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about this. And by the time you talk through it and they recognize that this is actually a new, very valid way of getting someone into camping, then they soften, but they don't understand it. And that's why I do really believe that COVID changed the landscape, and everybody needs to be re-educated, because if we keep doing what we've always done, especially for my heart, which is my mom and pops, they will not succeed.
I think Mike wants to talk here in a second, but I just want to say, I don't disagree with what you're saying in principle, but I think the entry level is completely different. I don't think you're going tent to RV anymore. I don't think RVs ever sell at the level they ever have in 2019. I don't think you're ever going to sell more RVs than you did in 2019. 40 years from now, I don't think you're ever going to have that happen. So I think the entry level now is glamping.
Well, and I was going to kind of go where sort of what you're saying, Brian. I think there's a paradigm shift, right? And necessity is the mother of all invention. And we're talking about camping and tent camping, but I think it's more than that. I remember when we got into the industry, almost 10 years ago, and we were looking at ELS and Sun, and we're like, oh, we could do this. And we built an RV resort, not really understanding that what Sun and ELS were doing, majority wise, they're not resorts, they're MH neighborhoods, right? And so we were looking at the numbers and what they did, and it's like, oh, we could do, and we found out the hard way, so to speak, that we were very successful, but it's not the same thing. And so right now, I think there needs to be a paradigm shift. There's going to be a blending of the MH and the camping world, if you will, right? And so one of our strategies for next year, for example, is we are definitely pivoting towards long-term and less transient. If we don't, then we are set up for failure, right? And so, Brian, as we talk about on our marketing calls, how do we market, how do we SEO towards long-term traveling nurses, full-timers, construction, etc., build your base. And because to your point, the transient, and it's no different than the hotel world, right? The hotel world, groups go in and out depending on what the group cycle is, right? Conventions go in and out. Government travel, depending on what the per diem is or depending on where they are with the budget, goes in and out. And so how do you pivot your strategies to make sure that you build the best mix of business based on what, the market is telling you and dictating towards you? And so what's interesting about the RV industry, and Sandy and I and Scott and I mean, we've all talked about this ad nauseum. What you define as glamping, what I define as glamping, what somebody else defines as glamping, what you define as transient, what I define as transient, what you define as camping, and what I define as camping. It's all different. And my point is, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, we're in the outdoor hospitality business. And so in business, you have to find the right strategy to make yourself the most successful. And for us, it's understanding what the market conditions are and how we pivot to find what our new mix is going to be, which is going to be a combination of camping, transient, long-term, MH, full-timers, etc., and smashing all of those together because we can't just rely on one bucket. So that was my point.
No, you have to expand, right? And so this is like, maybe I need to set the stage from my perspective, right? Like, so let somebody pick a state here. Just so I am not prepped for this, right? Pick a state.
Arizona.
I already know Arizona. Pick a state that has a stake in.
Oklahoma.
All right, so Oklahoma. So we'll just pick out Oklahoma City. It doesn't even matter, right? But just for an example, like this is the conversations we're having with our clients when they ask us what to do in 2025. And I'm not going to give you the whole strategy but this is the nuts of it, right? Is that there are only a certain number of people who are coming to Oklahoma City, whether it's Google searches or AI searches or Facebook searches or whatever, who are looking for Oklahoma City RV resort, RV park, tent camping, glamping, whatever. That's a finite cap of a ceiling. Now that's different in every single city, in every single place, in every single category, in every single keyword. But generally speaking, Scott, I think you'll agree that in almost all areas of the country outside of Yellowstone and maybe for whatever reason Indiana, this number of people who are searching for these keywords is down year over year. Is that fair?
Yep, that's fair.
Okay. So your ceiling of available people that you can reach who are already searching for those keywords is lower in 2024 than it was in 2023. We expect it to be generally lower in 2025 than it is in 2024, which means that if you don't figure out how to expand your strategy, meaning that and that's anything from adding glamping or allowing people who go car camping or changing your rates or adding new amenities but there's still that finite cap of people who are looking for RV resorts in the city. But to the reaching out of the people who are in other industries, right? Who are coming to, so there are people who are looking for RV resort and RV park. There are more people who are coming to Oklahoma City, generally speaking, who don't own an RV and who are not looking for traditional search terms like tent camping or campgrounds, but sure as heck might be willing to stay with you if they knew you had glamping or cabins, to Mike's point about like, you must add this stuff.
Or they're looking for a hotel room and you haven't loaded your glamping into hotel inventory.
Right. So that's what I mean with glamping. You can convert the hotel's guest into a glamping guest, right? And so you've got to look at that. So how do I reach those people? Because I'm not a hotel, but how do I get in front of those people? So then maybe I look for the people who like fishing or boating or going out on a lake or doing the outdoor rec stuff that Scott was talking about. And then I show those people, like, here's some valuable information related to what you're looking for, whether it's bird watching in Oklahoma City or whatever, through social media or through blog posts or through whatever else. Now you're on my site. Now you're curious. Now I've got you in my funnel. Oh, look, what is this place I'm on? They have glamping. That's interesting. I never even knew that was a thing, or it was nice, or it had air conditioning in the bathroom. And so then all of a sudden you've expanded your audience of people who are, instead of just the people who are RV resort people or RV park or campground or tent camping or glamping, you've now got an opportunity to reach all of the people who are coming to Oklahoma City for things that are in the beginning closer to, like, if I'm willing to go hiking in Oklahoma City, I don't even know if that's a thing in Oklahoma City, walking around downtown, I'm more likely to spend time outside, which means I'm more likely to go camping, right? And so you work your way through the types of people coming to Oklahoma City who are more likely to convert into an outdoor experience. But you still, when all that's said and done, you still have a finite cap of how many people are going to come to Oklahoma City, period. So then it becomes a game of, like, all right, well, if I'm really doing my marketing right and I've hit all the people, and we'll talk about the different things of marketing and how you got to expand that in later, right? But like, if you've got all the people who are coming to Oklahoma City, period, then you've got to decide, do I become a tourism bureau for Oklahoma City? Do I reach out to, like, I don't know, whatever Duncan is, or Marlowe or Piedmont or Perry, and or Tulsa even, and reach out to those people and say, like, man, Oklahoma City is a cool place. You should consider coming here. And then bringing more people into the city that I can then convert into people who want to stay at glamping or whatever else, right? I mean, that's the game. There's a finite cap of people, period. You have to be firing on all your cylinders. You have to be accepting a diverse roster of guests, like Mike was talking about. You have to be willing to play with your entry level. You have to be willing to add glamping. You've got to be thinking about all of this stuff. And that's one. But at some point, you're going to get to a cap of the number of people you can target. You can't just go turn on Google Ads, because they're not searching for the terms in the numbers that they used to. It doesn't work like that anymore. So then you've got to, so now once you're humming on all marketing, then you've got to move to the next piece, which is, of those people who you've now got to find you through a blog post or social media or through traditional SEO or your Google ad campaigns or whatever you're doing, humming on all cylinders, you have to make sure that the maximum amount of people who are already reading your email, who are already on your website, who are already calling you on the phone, are actually converting. That requires competent, coherent people to answer your phones and be happy and excited and cheerful to talk to people. It requires them to have an intimate knowledge of your park. It requires you to, I guess, period, answer the phone first, right? Which is apparently a bigger struggle than I understood. But converting those people who are already aware of you through the marketing into, like, at the highest rate possible. So maybe it's just making up a number, 20% now. Well, what if I can optimize that by spending a little bit more money on the person who's sitting behind my front desk because they have, 20 years ago, they went to college for sales and they can talk coherently, or they're happy and have a bubbly personality. Maybe I can take that 20% and turn it into 30. Then I've got more dollars. I've expanded my market through the other direction, right? Through raising my conversions. And then it's all about margins. How do I cut my costs? Because I've talked about, and many of you can disagree with me, and I might be wrong, I expect this economy to continue to go down. I think it's going to be a huge problem when the knowledge workers, who are our luxury demographic of $75,000 to $150,000 a year, start losing their jobs because of AI in 2025. I don't think they're going to have money to travel. I think luxury is in trouble too. So then I think it becomes a game of margins. How do I cut my costs and survive until the economy comes back? Because it will, probably. But how do I do that, right? And so those are the three things that we're talking to people about. I don't know if you guys agree. Or disagree. Or tell me I'm crazy.
I'm not sure. There's 75 points in that diatribe there.
Three things, right? Three things. Do your marketing well. Maximize your conversions of the people who are aware of you already, and focus on your margins. Three things.
You said a lot more than that, but if it's just those three things, then yes. It's the other points that I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not saying like I'm 100% right. I'm not saying that you agree with every single point I'm saying. I know we have differing opinions, but generally speaking, those are the three things we're preaching. Yes, I have different methods than everybody, right?
Yeah. But what you're saying, Brian, also mirrors what I was saying, because when you're talking about keyword strategy and SEO and attracting people to your site, you're using terms that represent experiences. What is it that I want to do? Right. And so I might not be looking for a campground. I might be looking for a place to go fishing. Right. And how do I use those terms? Because those are assets I have around me as a campground to draw them in. And so I think it all kind of goes together. I do think too that we have to be aware of and start looking at, again, that younger generation and bringing them into the camping experience. And that's how we increase demand, is through those younger people. They're not campers yet. So we're there, but there's plenty of them. So we need to increase that demand in that demographic. And one thing we know is that the difference between a hotel and a campground is nobody goes to a hotel and walks in and has the manager greet you by your first name and ask if you brought your dog with you, right? You don't walk across the hall in your PJs to the person in the room and say, hey, can I borrow some sugar? Or how about coming over for a cup of coffee? That happens every day naturally in campgrounds. And the Generation Z is the loneliest generation, the most disconnected generation we've ever had. And their strongest felt need is for connection, real connection. And we can provide that in campgrounds. That's our superpower.
So I agree with that. And I agree with what you're talking about. Like at the bottom of the margins are affected by the cancellation policies, by the deposits, like all that stuff plays into, I think it's not just, I think it's a demographic play. It's what you just said. It's Gen Z, but it's also other demographics. It's Earl from Black Folks Camp 2. It's reaching out to that demographic. It's reaching out to the people who don't normally even consider camping or outdoor hospitality or whatever we're going to define it as, right?
Well, and the other thing too that I'm really passionate about 2025 and I'm dedicating a lot of my time to is for our communities to stop working in silos. We've got to start working together. Campgrounds have to work with the industry that produces the RVs, and we have to join together to solve these problems. And when we do, we're going to become stronger. And then we also need to engage the RVers themselves, and we need to listen to them and let them tell us what it is that they want instead of assuming. I mean, I can't tell you how many times in the 8 or 9 years that I've been working between the two, I've heard somebody say at one level, well, we ship to the dealers what they want. And then you ask the dealers, what do you want? And they say, we want RVs that have brown interiors because they don't get dirty when people walk through them. I mean, what sense does that make? The whole world is telling you they want the lighter colors, they want more open air, but we're going to ship brown because it stays cleaner on the lot. And these are the conversations we need to be having collectively together in order to truly succeed. And when we build those bridges of communications, I do think we'll be better.
I was going to ask Scott a question, but he looks kind of busy over there now. It's way more important. I don't know. What kind of dog do you have, Scott?
That is a Beagle Red Tick Coonhound mix.
Never would have guessed that in 1,000 years. I don't know any dog breeds really at all, except Yorkshire Terriers, which are the best dogs ever. But
Denise had to leave. She had the little emergency come up, so she's only 6 months old. So
I was going to ask you, for your thoughts on both what I said and what Sandy just said, and then generally the RV industry. I think we wanted to talk about that briefly, just from a data set.
But I think there's a couple things, kind of going back to the economy. A down economy can provide an opportunity. My view is somewhat contrary to some, and that is, I feel like when the people still want to travel, the desire is there. How do you figure out how to do that in a down economy? And I think some of the things you mentioned, margins, all that kind of stuff. How do you figure that out? How do you increase a stay by one night? Some of that kind of stuff, like convince someone to stay one more night. Those are, to me, those are the things that are the challenges. I feel the other challenge is the long term. Again, it's we had the what happened during COVID kind of wiped out some of that progress we were making on the base, kind of from the bottom up. The people who started off because they wanted to go outdoors, they wanted to try camping, they wanted to try glamping, they wanted to try a different outdoor experience. We lost some of those people. So again, I think that there's two issues here. One is the short term. How 2025? What do you do? What adjustments do you make? I think there's things that people can do to bring people in. To be self-serving, people need to do some more research and figure out what it is that people are looking for. What kind of experiences do they want? How do you increase that night by one more? How do you tap into some of those different markets? I think there are some short-term solutions. Long-term, I think the industry, if you look at the industry as a whole, needs to do a better job of bringing people in and figuring out how to engage them at a different level. When you think about what are the benefits of being outdoors, having the outdoor hospitality experience, what are those benefits? And to convince a generation of people who are not very social, who are not very attuned to the other people around them, who are very much embedded in their screen time. How do you engage them more? How do you convince them that this is the thing to do? And the thing is, just get them on site. That's what I think is just figure out
to do that. You have to go where they are, right? And they're on their screens.
Exactly. Bingo.
But they're not on Google.
That's where we're circling back to. It's like you get them, find them on there. Find the people that I've always been really snarky about, like influencers and stuff like that. But I also see the value in it. That find the influencers, the ones that that will have an impact. Show them, if you're doing marketing, find some influencers, find some people to use that influence this group, that their peer group, that are out there, that are out camping, that are glamping, that are staying at these resorts, that are having a good time, more, and moving it beyond the Instagram moments. And kind of, it's that emotional connection. I know for a data guy, I'm not supposed to talk about emotions, but it's all about the emotional connection. How do you tap into that with your marketing? How do you do that? How do you get at that? You hire Brian Searl, and he will help you with that. I mean, that's the point. That's the point of the marketing. It's like, find that emotional connection, do it through your marketing. The opportunity is there. The people are there. The desire is there. As Mike said earlier, we live in we work in a live. I guess it's kind of a Freudian slip there, but the idea that we work in a very robust industry, one that has a good future, but you have to figure out how to adapt. We have to be more nimble.
Well, that's the thing. The people are there, right? But they're not where you expect them to be generally from a 20-year history, right? Like if you talk to, and I'm in this industry in marketing, right? I'm talking about my peers who have been in this for 20 years. I would say 70 to 80% of the people who are marketing experts or professionals, if you ask them what to do to attract more people to any industry, period, but specifically to ours, they know less about, right? Coming from the outside. But to any industry, the answer coming out of 70 to 80% of their mouths is going to be post more on social, run Google ads, because they're not even thinking about this stuff, or Gen Z or wherever they're looking, right? Mm-hmm. Like there are more people certainly who are probably going to tell you, like, go on TikTok, make videos. The algorithms are favoring that. There's more of that. Like, that number is not 70 to 80%, right? But the attention is gone for Google. Like, I posted on LinkedIn the other day. There's an article in the Wall Street Journal. I don't think I posted the link to Googling is for old people. Like, it's not quite that bad yet, right? But it's quickly going there.
Which still makes up an important part of our industry. And so I don't disagree with you, Brian, that we need to evolve and adapt. But if somebody asks me, gosh, I need to get more business, the first two things I'm still always going to ask them is, what is your digital strategy? And that includes SEO and Google ads. And what's your social strategy? That doesn't mean what you're saying isn't important as also plussing. Right. But that none of what you're saying, in my opinion, and it's just an opinion, replaces those other two. Those are still the majority of driving the business. That doesn't mean that you don't need to evolve and to integrate some of these other new strategies, but I think to dismiss them and say the world of Google ads is over, I don't think is accurate.
I mean, I think the problem that you're having is that right now that statement is true, Mike, but in 3 months it's going to be less true, and in 3 months it's going to be less true. It's going to move so fast that you don't have time to just decide that Google Ads and social is the only thing you're going to do in 2025.
I never said only. I said that, 80-20 rule. And, in a year, will it be 70-30 rule? Who knows what the number will be? But for sure, it's got to be a mix of strategies.
Right, but it's fragmented. It's even in Google. Like even in Google, if their attention is still on Google, now you've got AI overviews that are not the same thing. How do you get in them? How do you advertise in them? How do you make sure your company is the answer? Because there's not going to be blue links. Like Google has literally stated this as far back as May, that blue links are going to be gone. So at that point, like, what is your ranking? To your point, Mike, what is your SEO strategy? Like SEO, yes, for sure, is way more important to me than Google Ads. Way more important. But SEO and social, yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you, right? But social done right. And the thing with social being done right is it's not just go post. We have so many clients who call us like, I hired you to post on social media. You're posting a picture of my RV park. How come it doesn't have 5,000 likes? Because no one cares. I mean, no one cares that you have a pretty sunset at your park. Like everybody has that. Like you have to do something different on social to stand out, whether that's video content or entertainment or, whatever it is. You've got to please the algorithms. It has to be interesting. It has to be valuable. People have to want to see it. It's not, and so yes, social, Mike, but social completely differently than people are used to. Like they're just not paying attention to the right numbers, the vanity metrics. I mean, we're not even going down the rabbit hole of like page views. Like forget about your page views. You're never going to have as much traffic as you did in 2019 on your camp, or even recently this year, right? Ever. It's going to go down. And if you look through the thought process of the people who, like, I have clients emailing me who, like, my page views are down. What's happening? How do I get them back up? You don't. Yeah. But that's okay. That's not a problem, because what used to happen is people would go to Google without AI overviews in Google or any of the other things we're not even talking about yet, right? And they would click to a website, and Sandy's done this. Sandy's full-timed, right? They would click to a website, they'd look and learn about the park, and they'd go back and they look at the next, and they look at the next one. They look at the next one. They may look at 4, 5, 6, and then they'd make a decision. But now all that research is going to be done either in a Google AI overview or ChatGPT or whatever else, to the point where they click to your website, you're going to be one of 2 choices. So your page views are going to go down, but the people who are there, if you do your marketing right, should be more likely to convert into a reservation because they know more about your park already. Nobody's thinking about this stuff.
Well,
they're paying attention to the wrong things.
And I think a lot of what you're saying too, Brian, relates to when we first started talking about inbound marketing. We talked about whether you were shooting with a shotgun or with a rifle, right? And I think the problem in the industry right now is we've kind of coalesced with other industries, and then we've expanded out. Scott and I had this long conversation about what is glamping. What, is it a campground, an RV park, or, or a long-term stay? I mean, there's so much so many terminology, right, of different things and different options, and they all kind of cross over. They don't have clear meanings. And so a lot of what's going on is we're not even explaining who we are and what we do well anymore. It's kind of like brand terms, right? People used to say, I want a Coke, and they didn't mean they wanted Coca-Cola. They meant I want a Coke or a Pepsi or an RC Cola. Or
the white powder. It could be the white powder. Let's be honest.
But we're in all of these searches, right? This all speaks to how we invest our money in the searches and how we find things, because these terms are not clear enough.
But those terms are done. Like, forget about it now. Like, forget about the keyword search terms, because we've been all done. Like, they're not done yet, to Mike's point. They're not going to be done completely for, depending on what Google does next year, right? But they're not, like, if it's all AI overviews in Google, it's going to be much faster, which it probably will be. But like, they're not searching for these keywords anymore. AI in Google, in overviews in Google, because they're still using Google, to Mike's point, right, is going to understand that you want like some kind of a luxury experience. And if you do your marketing right and present your stuff, your information about your property, and get it into the AI searches, the AI is going to know that it can present an opportunity for whatever you want to call it, right? Next to the hotel.
Yeah. Well, and what I'm saying is that it's not even about the technology. It's about the step before the technology. The individual who desires to have some type of a travel experience doesn't even understand enough about what we, the insiders, are using and talking about that has multiple meanings to accurately even ask AI or search in Google and get what they want.
Right, but they don't need to anymore is what I'm trying to sell you. The AI is going to understand what they mean. The AI is going to understand.
I don't agree with that because I have a conversation with Campy all the time and ask it questions, and it gives me 2 or 3 different answers because it still doesn't understand.
Well, again, that's going to rapidly improve, right? Like as early as January. But that's the thing is you're not going to have to implicitly say glamping is my point, or outdoor hospitality, or luxury camping, or whatever the heck the other words are that people are using. It's going to understand that you're open to outdoor experiences is what you're looking for, or you just want to go stay. Where's a nice place for me to stay? If you do your marketing right, why shouldn't that surface a glamping place alongside a hotel? Like, it's not out of the realm of possibility.
Well, I don't want it to show me a hotel if I'm traveling with my rig.
Well, but then that's your search, though. You know that, right? Like you're looking for RV searches then. Your question is going to become more of not Oklahoma City RV park. Your question is going to become, where can I go stay with my rig when I'm traveling through Oklahoma City? And it's not even going to be typing. It's going to be on voice.
Yeah, that was the point I'm trying to make is the end user before they ever get to the tool is not educated enough on how to ask the right questions to get the right answers. AI is smarter than we are at this point.
Right, which means they're going to have to be less smart is my point. They're going to be able to have that conversation and say, I'm traveling through Oklahoma City. I'd like to stay in a nice luxury property or place or whatever they do. And why can't, like, certainly it's going to still recommend the nice hotels, right? Like the Omni we just stayed at or whatever. Right. But why can't one of those mixes be a nice glamping resort in Oklahoma City? I don't even know if one exists, but somebody will build it.
Yeah.
Am I off base, Mike? Like, you're my voice of reason, right? You like to be that person. So, like, again, you got to pay attention to it all. But you have to pay attention to it all.
I think what you just said is important. You have to pay attention to it all. I disagree that AI is taking over the world. I think you absolutely need to use it as an enhancement, but there are going to be people, and there are going to continue to be people that need a visual, that are going to need to pull up the Google map and see where everything is and see where this park is and where Oklahoma City is and see where the date is, and asking the question, have AI give you its only answer back is limiting. We had this exact conversation in our office, and all 7 of us can't be wrong, right? But it's perspective. And so there's different segments, there's different generations, there's different users. And so it's going to have to be a balance, right? It is no different than when the hotel industry, some people are still using hard keys and some people are using digital keys. Oh my God, everybody's going to use a digital key. And eventually that happened 40 years later. But there, still are some hotels that use a hard key. And so this is not in the next 6 months or the next year that AI, Google doesn't exist and Google ads don't exist and Google search doesn't exist.
But Google is going to be AI is what I'm trying to tell you. The difference is they're going to force AI onto everyone.
And the users are going to tell them no. And so
they're not going to care.
And well, that may be the case, but I still think, I use AI for what I use AI for. It cannot help me enough to do the search in the way that I need to do the search. Yes. And I'm not alone.
But that's what's coming in January, Mike. Like OpenAI is already like agents.
We will see.
Like it's already done. It can operate your computer. Like it's going to do plain text. It's going
to. This conversation, we live and breathe this stuff every day. Those of us on the podcast, but the people that are out there, they don't.
Yeah.
And things are changing so much, which to me reinforces 2 things that I'm passionate about. One is proper education, and 2 is conversations like this, but not within us, with the broader community, so that we all learn from each other and we maximize our opportunities, because iron is sharpening iron, for lack of a better term.
I have to hop off. I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. Well, like we're at our time, so like, does everybody have to go, or does anybody want to stay and keep talking?
I got a 1 o'clock call.
See
But
that?
happy birthday, Dave. Always fun.
Just assume that everything else we say, Mike agrees with.
All right, we'll throw his name around liberally, and
Rubber stamps.
I mean, like, you guys, can you guys stay for a few minutes, or what do you want to do?
yeah, I can.
Like,
As long as the
like,
dog doesn't tear apart the house.
I don't want to scare people, right? And I know that some of this stuff that's coming out of my mouth is scary, and I know that there's probably a 80% plus majority of people who are like, "You're nuts. That is never going to happen at the speed that you think it's going to happen at."
Yeah.
But they're forcing it on people. Like there was already a ton of pushback against Google AI overviews in May or April, and they took it away for 2 months and they made it better, and it's more places than it's ever been before. And people are adopting this stuff, and it's working better. They're finding easier answers. Apple is putting this on their phones. The people who use Apple are the less tech-savvy people, generally speaking. Certainly there are tech-savvy people there who are weird. I'm just going to say that out loud. Use Android. It's better. Anyway, but like the people who use Apple are generally speaking less tech-savvy because they want things all in one package, right? They don't want to do all the hard things. And they have just released like an upgraded version of Siri where you can type in it and you can search just like Google, and then you can get a fallback as ChatGPT. And as people upgrade their Apple iPhones, like this is 1 billion people who are never, ever going to touch Google again. Ever. Meta is building its own search engine. ChatGPT has its own search engine. Like the amount of people in Google is going to fragment into 40,000 pieces so fast. Like and I know, like I get that it sounds nuts and you can't process that, but that's for sure going to happen next year.
Yeah. Well, what I think is in technology, we've always had the bell curve, right? And there's always the guys that are on the bleeding edge, which is you, Brian. And then there's the ones that are on the cutting edge, which is where I prefer to live because as a consultant working with clients, I don't ever want to put them on the bleeding edge. And then you get to the top of the curve where you're talking about where you start reaching adoption. I think the thing that we have to be aware of right now is that step from bleeding edge to mainstream adoption is getting shorter and shorter.
Oh, it's completely. It's the same thing with Mike's example of hotel keys, right?
Yeah.
It took 40 years to adopt hotel keys, but if every hotel the next day had digital keys,
right,
the adoption would have been straight line. Yeah. And that's what they're doing to you. They're forcing AI in front of you in in the devices that you already have.
Yeah. And where earlier today you were saying, I don't think the parks have time to ramp up. I think that speaks to this and your experience and perception for where you are.
That's
because
true.
AI is growing so fast. But so I do agree with that. But I do think that we are out ahead of it enough for them to make at least some significant changes in their plans for 2025 to make a difference. And any change we make that positively impacts our bottom line is better than none.
Like the biggest thing we're talking about, forget about scary. The biggest thing we're talking about is SEO.
Yeah. Well, and without podcasts like what you do and the efforts of other people, like what Scott does with his research, they really are out there all alone in a brand new landscape with no guidelines.
Well, we're going to change that. Scott and I are going to have a data call or data, like, I don't know if it's going to be weekly, but something in 2025, right? Catchy name to be disclosed later. But in addition to the show, right? And maybe I'll do, like, I'm going to do a lot more content in AI, because I'll have more time for reasons that will soon become clear to people. Scott already knows, but,
one thing that's kind of funny, Brian, is, even me, though I love technology, when you started this whole AI stuff a couple of years ago, it was a little frightening, but because I continued to listen to you, I started, adopting it. But now what's so funny is that I use AI so much all day long that when I do go to the Google search, I'm trying to use, it's like I'm still trying to use that native language conversation. And it's not exactly the same, right? Yeah. I want it on Google.
Well, and it will be there, right? It will be there. Like Google's, again, I don't know how good it's going to be, but it's going to be, it already is there, to be clear. It's almost every query except I think like the local businesses and some of the medical stuff and stuff like that, right? But that's going to quickly change. But like SEO, don't be scared.
Yeah.
Like SEO. And here's the thing. You can't just call up your website designer who's been designing your website for $12 a month or log into Wix and make SEO pretty. We're not talking about stuffing keywords in here. We're talking about building links. We're talking about building a brand. We're talking about schema markup on the back end. We're not talking about like, yep, I've got Yoast SEO installed on your website. You're good to go. No. And if you don't know what to ask your website developer, go to ChatGPT and say, I'm concerned about SEO in the age of AI. What are the 5 things that I need to make sure my website dev is doing for me? And when you call them on the phone and 4 of those things, they're like, I don't even know what you're talking about, fire them quickly because you don't have time. But it's all SEO because the AIs are crawling your website. They're understanding all that. And we're not even talking about the crazy stuff yet, right? But SEO is the number one thing that you must pay attention to, on-page and off-page SEO. On-page to get them to understand what you are, off-page to get them to understand you're important to the conversation. Both of them in tandem at the exact same time, ongoing. It never, ever stops. It's not I called my website dev and he did answer all the 5 questions right and he says, I'm good with SEO and he's done. No, never. Never. And, I don't know. And we're not even talking about the crazy stuff yet, Scott. Like, I mean, like what I was trying to tell Mike is coming in January is agents that can operate your computer. They'll literally be able to open the programs and do data entry and browse the internet and plan trips for you. And one of the stated examples of tens of thousands it's going to be able to do. But the 3 marketable things that OpenAI said is coming is booking travel. It will be able to book travel for you. So now imagine a world where the robot is going to your website and doesn't care about the CTA you spent 55 hours agonizing over with your marketing person. Like, imagine the AI is doing all the research and the planning. Like, that is what we're literally headed to in 2025. And everybody's not going to adopt it in 2025. I'm not saying that. That's going to be a longer curve. But the ability of people to start doing it is there. And then what happens when the AI can go browse your website and go to CampSpot and fill in all the dates and come back to you and say, like, I know you like, warm weather in the middle of summer. So I've picked out this stay for you, July 17th through the 19th in Oklahoma City, where you've never been before. Would you like me to book it? Sure. Like, this changes booking windows. This changes behavior. This changes everything. This changes your dynamic pricing. What happens when the AI, and it's not going to happen next year, but in 2026, when the AI prompts you, do you want to book your trip again? You want to book your camping trip for the winter or the summer in February? And then in February, it's going to book. What happens to the dynamic pricing that isn't really dynamic pricing in the reservation systems? They don't have Disney dynamic pricing. They don't have hotel dynamic pricing. And even that's going to be defeated. But what happens when the AI figures out that it can book February 2nd instead of February 5th to get a better price? And then all the AIs do it. And then you go manually adjust your price. And in 10 seconds, it's like, I'll just book February 7th instead. They didn't get that date done. Like, this is big stuff. So I wasn't even talking about the crazy stuff, even though it sounded crazy.
Yeah, it is. Hey, I do have to jump now too. So it was great.
Sandy was like, that was too much for me.
I hope I wasn't too much, too sparkly for you today.
No, like, I mean, everything you say is always, I don't want to say always, right? Because I'm not always correct.
Go ahead and say
most
I'm
of the
always
things
right.
you say make sense. Like, I was just trying to get to the, like, how do we make the biggest impact and then the littlest impact, all of which are important. So thank you.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you guys.
All right. Take care.
I don't know if I have much more to say, Scott, but is there any data that you like wanted to cover and get out there that we haven't talked about?
I think that the only thing, in more general terms, just kind of thinking how people think about all this. And when they think about their marketing, when they think about what they're doing, I know I mentioned that earlier, but when in some of the stuff we've been looking at in terms of how people, the level of interest and how that's changing, is, again, I can't reinforce enough that a lot of the traditional terms that people use for searching are declining, whereas for example, I know it's a weird one, but I'll use this as an example. We're seeing an upward trend in searches for forest bathing. Okay, we all know that's just hanging out in the woods, hanging out there, whatever. But forest bathing, it's a new term.
Like bathing, like hot springs?
No. Where you just hang out in the woods and
Okay.
take it all in.
I've been to a cool hot spring in the middle of Alberta that was out near BC.
Oh, I love the hot springs too. New Mexico. Anyway, but that's a term that people are now using, and it's on the rise. Volume's still relatively low, but it's rising, and it's terms like that. Take another term, say agritourism. Again, didn't even really exist 10 years ago. Now all of a sudden, it's rising. It's increasing. Things like that are, and I think that's why I think it's important for the campgrounds to one, make sure that they hire someone good to do their marketing, and two, keep abreast of what's going on out there. To really use AI, because AI is a great tool to go out there and figure out what's going on. What are people doing? If AI will tell you about forest bathing.
But you know what it won't do, and this is what scares me too a little bit, is we won't have that data. We're going to start to have, we're going to have the data from Google search for a while of how many people are looking for those keywords. But are we going to have the data of how many people are asking long tail keywords that result in an answer about forest bathing or on ChatGPT, or how many people even, let alone type in forest bathing on ChatGPT? That data is going to be a black hole for a while. Yeah, so it's going to be tougher and tougher to uncover trends. Still pay attention to them. Everything you're saying is right, but also.
Right. It's going to be, yeah, you're right though. It's a lot of that will go away. In the short term though, people should pay attention to that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Think about that. Because, again, a few years ago, I'd never heard of forest bathing until someone brought it up. We included it in some of our research. And it's like,
I've never heard about it until you just brought it up today, unless I was in a report that I didn't read that was my own report.
But but anyway, those things, again, we talked about the car camping thing. Within that category, one of the fastest growing trends I've seen are people doing searches for the attachable tents to vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
Not just rooftop, but the ones that that attach to like the back. And a campground that says no car camping, now you have to think about this. It's like it's attached to the car. It's a tent, right? But it's still attached.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
anyway, these are things that are happening out there.
These restrictions, like I think Sandy was talking about, right? Like the no tent camping, no car camping that you're talking about too. These are another conversation.
Absolutely.
Right? Like look at all these people who are like, if your RV is more than 10 years old, you can't come stay with me. Do you want to go broke?
Right.
Like, really? Is it like, I mean, I get it at the really, really high-end luxury resorts, but at some point, like especially if the economy continues to decline and people stop buying new RVs, at some point they're going to be 11 years old. What's your plan?
Right.
Like obviously you have to have standards, but you're going to have to start relaxing and rethinking some of these rigid rules that you've all put in. Like, I mean, again, we'll call out the Facebook groups, right? All the people, like not all the people, because most owners don't do this, right? But you see the posts that come out once in a while about the, I don't know, electric vehicle charging, for example, which obviously is a problem that needs solved. You can't like lose money on electricity. There's a whole can of worms to unpack there, right? But generally speaking, the people who are like, I just refuse to let people have electric cars in my park. Like, you're just literally signing your own death warrant. Is all you're doing. And why? Why is this the hill that you want to die on? Yeah,
to what end? To what end?
Exactly.
It's like, again, why would you, again, with the RV thing, there are people out there that go out and purposely get old RVs and retrofit them. And there's entire clubs of these types of RVs. And
they have very few places to go, by the way.
Yeah. So
opportunity.
It's kind of like, don't shoot yourself in the foot. Maybe there's parts of the market you can still peel off. I know that, I know the reasoning behind it, but also it's like they need to be smart about it. And some of these car campers have one of the data points we know is that the people who do car camping now, about, 70% of them have aspirations to actually purchase like an RV. So they're in their cars now. They do it in many cases for financial reasons and flexibility, but they'd like to have an RV to stay in, to have more space, to have more amenities. So why shoot yourself in the foot by turning them away now? And because
well, like again, nobody's saying you can't have standards. Like nobody's saying you have to let in the rusty Pontiac from 1968, right?
Right.
You can have standards, but why, if they're going to come and be respectful of your property and set up a nice looking tent that they spent $600 on from REI, and like, right? Like if they're outdoorsy and they have all the gear and they're neat and they're clean and they take care of the lawn and don't trample, why would you not want to charge them money and take their business?
They're good guests.
And I don't even understand the common refrain. Like, I mean, again, I get the I don't even, where does that even come from, the 10-year-old policy? Like, was there really that many people on the road who were just, like, I get it. You don't want to look at a rusty old school bus just like the rusty old Pontiac, right? But I think most people take care of their possessions for the most part. Right. And how many people, like the justification we hear from owners all the time is like, well, my guests don't want to look at that. Really? How many of them have told you that? Are you sure it's not just you who doesn't want to look at that?
Right. Or is it one person says something?
Yeah.
Is it just anecdotal? Does it become? Yeah. I honestly don't know where it comes from. It's probably instances like that.
We should ask ChatGPT after the call and figure it out. But
all right.
Where does this come from? Why is it there? But yeah, I mean, you just have to reframe your entire thinking, and whether that's Gen Z or the people you're trying to reach through car camping or glamping, or the people who are just coming to fish in Oklahoma City, or Black Folks Camp 2, or like, you've got to think about this stuff. And you have an assistant who you can just go now and type in and say, like, hey, I'm interested in reaching traditional people like Black people or Gen Z or Asian people or whoever it is, right? I want to be more inclusive at my campground of young, old, Black, white, male, female, families, kids, single travelers, traveling nurses, whatever. How do I deploy this to this specific type of people? And then this one, and then this one. And it will answer you. You don't have to spend hours studying this anymore. Is it going to be a perfect answer? No. You should still go take the course at Black Folks Camp 2.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Well, I would invite everyone to
use ChatGPT as a starting point.
Yep. And there's, again, the opportunity is there. People just have to work for it a little bit more, be a little bit smarter, listen, and ask a ton of questions. That's where I think
nobody's been forced into that yet, right? I think this economy is about to force people into those shit. What do I do?
Right.
You start learning now.
But now is the time before it becomes urgent in a crisis. The time is now.
All right. I should probably get to work, and you should probably get to work or something.
I go take care of a dog, so.
Yeah, that's a big responsibility. I don't even know where my dog is. She's so quiet and little, but okay. Thank you, Scott. I appreciate it.
All right,
we still have lots of viewers on here, so it's interesting to see what we do in 2025. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. I'm sure we'll talk to you again, Scott, and to everybody, on our next week's show. But appreciate you joining us for another episode of MC Fireside Chats, and we'll see you next week, guys.
All right. Take care, everybody. Bye.
This episode of MC Fireside Chats with your host, Brian Searl. Have a suggestion for a show idea? Want your campground or company in a future episode? Email us at hello@moderncampground.com. Get your daily dose of news from moderncampground.com. And be sure to join us next week for more insights into the fascinating world of outdoor hospitality.